What's going on, Fud Nation? We have a very, very special episode for you today as we bring back my good friend Eric Krown from Krown's Crypto Cave to give you an extremely useful and extremely timely analysis of the market, as Bitcoin has just done something that it has not done in over 18 months, and it is an extremely bullish, important signal that you should watch. Before we get into all the technical analysis, we actually do a little bit more of a deep dive on Mr. Eric Krown himself and all of his background, what led him up to doing his technical analysis. And if you want to skip through that, we're going to have timestamps in the description, so you can skip right ahead to the TA if you want to do that. But I think it's going to be useful for you to understand a little bit more about Krown and how he got to be doing what he's doing and what motivates him. I think it's a great episode, so I hope you enjoy it. I know I certainly did. As usual, if you get any value out of this episode, I'd appreciate it if you like the video. And of course, make sure to go follow Krown over at Krown's Crypto Cave. I'll link his channel in the description below. Without further ado, here's the interview. Welcome back to the show, none other than Eric Krown, the ever growing and fast emerging Howard Stern of crypto. How are you doing, my friend?
Hey Elliot, good to be back here, man. It is such a pleasure to be back here with the Fud Nation, man. I feel like this is kind of where I started, this community that I kind of started with. And man, I remember our first stream together, our first video together, almost about a year now, man. And just so many people that I met from this community. Of course, you're like daily staples in my life, man. It's actually been pretty damn crazy, and very happy to be back once again.
Yeah, I honestly feel the same way. You know, so much has changed, since we started streaming together. We had one stream and, I had been watching you for a long time before that. And I was just so entertained and educated every time. And I was so blown away that you wanted to come on my show that first time. And even more so now, like, I'm just so thankful that you still want to come on FUD TV and chat because, over the last few months, a lot has changed for you, I feel like. And I wanted to sort of go through that. I was actually up at an event. I was at the Warren Buffet lunch that actually was not a buffet lunch at all. And I ran into K-Dub. I was hanging out with K-Dub from Crypto Zombie.
Oh, no way.
Yeah,
that's
and
awesome,
I was hanging out with Ivan from Ivan on Tech, who
Oh,
were
hell
both in
yeah. All right.
attendance.
The whole crew's there.
And we were all chatting about you, and so it was a really good vibe, and it was just made me so happy to hear what's going on. So without me dialoguing here, what's been going on? So we started streaming. I think our first stream was back in November of last year, which, like you said, is almost a year ago. Wow, time flies. And what's been going on with Krown? How have things evolved on your end?
Yeah, man. I mean, there's been a lot that's going on. Of course, we've seen Bitcoin literally go from 20,000 to 3,000 back up to 14,000. I mean, this is a crazy market. So that's, been busy with that, of course, trading that, just more of an uptrend recently, you could say, especially coming in from when we first met back in last December. Other than that, man, moved countries once again. I'm actually living back in Chicago, Illinois. Moved out of Estonia. So I spent the last couple of years living in Finland, then Estonia, then came back here. And actually really, really liking it, man. But already getting the itch to set up a base abroad once again. So I'm looking at Sweden now, which, man, it looks so gorgeous out there. And so many people that I meet through I suppose, whatever you want to call this whole land here, this whole landscape are from Stockholm, Sweden. And they just seem so damn cool. I mean, Ivan on Tech for one, man, it'd be very, very cool to just be able to, hit him up and say, hey man, do you want to get some ground beef together or what? Other than that, man, it's been mostly just moving all my stuff really for the past year, building up this community and really just reaching out and creating relationships, man. Like that's the most fulfilling part that I've really come to with this whole endeavor, I suppose you could say. I didn't really need to create or do this community, but it's been motivating for myself in just a whole new unique way, because before I felt like I was kind of missing something in a way. You always have to feel like as a human being, you're working towards something, day in, day out. When you wake up, you want to have that intrinsic motivation, that intrinsic discipline to carry you towards whatever goal it is, because that's, what's kind of just most fulfilling for ourselves. And I found that in creating this community, man. So this past year has been just incredibly fulfilling, seeing a lot of people go from, complete beginner, complete starter, and then being able to, do their own thing. And so many people just literally quitting whatever job that they came in when we first met. And then like 6 months later, they're saying, hey, Krown, I just quit my job. I'm ready to do this. I proved to myself that I can be successful with this. And here we are, and I'm really, really happy now. It's like,
So
wow,
so let's
that's
rewind.
amazing.
Let's rewind a little bit. That's absolutely
Yeah.
amazing to hear. You're giving people the keys to the kingdom to really be their own, to control their own destiny, which is an amazing gift you can give to anyone. But long before that, you learned to control your own destiny. For people who are not
hmm
familiar, I don't know how you could possibly not be familiar with Crown at this point. But why don't you briefly go over your background, how you got into the space, and then talk a little bit about how you sort of came to do what you do now, and then we can move into talking a little bit about what your future goals are for what you're doing, given that you've reached this place in the community.
Yeah, absolutely. So I first started trading, first started getting into this whole business. I mean, really, when I was a kid, like 10, 11, I would go down to the floor of the Pacific Stock Exchange with my father, who was a trader down there. And, instantly I fell in love with it, man. The first day that I go down there, this big broker, and if you're not familiar with brokers, brokers are like, they're like the bullies of the playground. And he's like this former bike gang member, just a heavy metal guy, amazing, super nice, by the way. But he sees me as a little kid down there, and he just picks me up. I try to like introduce myself to him. He picks me up and puts me in a trash can, right? And so ever since then, I'm like, oh, okay, this is kind of like a fun place. It's like an adult playground essentially, and that always really scared me about. Just about getting older and growing up, I suppose. Even at that age, I always had anxiety with that. Having to like put on the suit and tie and do the monkey dance and all that good stuff. And to go down there and see adults just being like grown up kids essentially and having fun, man, having jokes with each other, I fell in love instantly down around there. So I'd go back every summer with my father and be a clerk for him, and just being a clerk and being around the business, being around all the people chatting, you pick it up here and there pretty damn quickly. And then of course, once you get to a college, waste a few years there. For me, about 6 years almost. And yeah, yeah,
You were a
it was
6 year
certainly
senior. You were a super super
yeah,
duper. You were super duper
a
duper
couple of
senior.
victory laps right there. Yeah, there's a
All right,
couple of
so
victory laps.
if you guys were wondering where Van Wilder ended up, he's right here in crypto land.
Yeah, man. I actually ended up graduating with a couple degrees, man. But I just stayed in college to basically waste time, man. It wasn't really for me. The things that I learned in college, and this is coming from someone who graduated with a degree in economics and then business, and took about half a pre-med as well. I don't use anything that I ever learned in college, man.
Hmm.
It was, college was great for like learning social things, being away from your parents for the first time, all that great stuff, 100%. But as far as real world skills, I mean, listening to some guy in a business class tell you about the 4 P's of business, and he doesn't even run a business himself. It's like, hey, this feels kind of fake. I want to learn from the source. So one of the things that I learned very early in my life was, don't take advice, don't listen to someone who's not where you want to be yourself. And that's obviously context dependent. Of course, it's not like you don't just listen to someone who's in one area and then apply it to another. Of course, there's a lot of nuances with something like that. But when it comes down to it, immediately that statement would always come back to my mind. It's like where's your credentials, where's your skin in the game? And that really bothered me about college. So when I ended up leaving, I came down back to my home state of California, and essentially just harassed one of my family friends essentially, who I met through my father. And he at that time was working down on the floor of New York Stock Exchange ARCA, and he was a former options market maker, and now he was essentially creating like the software for market making. And he took me under his wing, man. It was really, really nice. It was an incredible experience for myself. I feel so damn lucky to have ever even just being able to sit next to that guy who had been doing it for 20 to 30 years himself. And he taught me how to use the system. He taught me about trading options, taught me about market making. And then after a few months of kind of sitting by him and doing some dummy trades and kind of testing the waters out, then I got pawned off to my next mentor, who had been doing this for even longer. He had been doing it for about 35 years at that point in time. And man, this guy just opened my eyes up to technical analysis, because most guys who are trading options actually don't ever really look at technicals. Well, I shouldn't say that most guys, but you can trade options without ever knowing a lick about technical analysis.
And
So this guy was both.
explain that
Mhm.
briefly. Just to
Okay.
recap here, you're pretty much born into the trading pits, held up like a young Simba, and yeah.
There you
So you
go.
absorbed this from a very young age. You understand
hmm
the sort of ins and outs of market dynamics, which is why when we talk a little bit later on about your feelings towards manipulation and all these things, I think that helps explain it. Is you've just been in this world for so long that you know how to
hmm
contextualize the big players versus the small players. And then now you're getting, where I interrupted you. You were getting essentially turned over to a better trader. That you were saying you don't actually need to look at technicals. How can you not look at technicals and trade?
Right. So if you understand options, options are all math, right? It's you're looking at a derivative product, and there's a bunch of different factors into how it gets priced. You have your delta, you have your gamma, you have your theta, you have your rho, and probably forgetting one, you have your vega, of course. With that, if you really understand math extremely well, you can come up with nice little formulas and whatnot, and little strategies which will, allow you to capture ranges and work off of more. I'm having trouble finding the right word, but work off of more defined mathematical parameters, which from there you can come up with theories, and from theories you can come up with expectations with, if I do this over here, if I put on these legs on over here, and we see this sort of a move, then I should profit from that. And it gets really complicated with that sort of thing, and that can definitely be done. Of course, even as a market maker, I mean, market makers don't really care about technical analysis either. They don't care about direction. It means nothing. So there's all different ways to make this game work, and that's one of the big things that I always come back to is people make it sound like everyone's trying to do the same thing at the same time. They're like the evil market makers manipulate the markets. I can tell you straight up, most people who say that, they probably have never met a market maker and understand what they do, because most market makers don't care about direction. So going back to that whole discussion, technical analysis was kind of like my eye-opening thing, because I've been trading options for a while then, learning from that first guy. And that was very helpful. But to then just combine it with another superpower made it extremely more potent. So it just put the odds more in your favor. So whenever it comes to trading, we're always thinking of we're always thinking of risk versus reward, right? So anytime that you can mitigate your risk, you are in turn making yourself have more reward down the road, because that once you bring that that side of the equation down, naturally over time you're going to get more gains, and vice versa if you just increase the gains marker as well. But typically most people struggle with the risk management, so that's that's the one to focus on. But anyways, with technical analysis, I was able to just kind of put that equation more and more in my favor, as I became more and more adept at it. So that was the real value in meeting this next guy, because he was like revered on the floor of New York Stock Exchange Arca, the oldest guy there by a mile, and technical analysis before technical analysis was even cool, like in the 70s and 80s, when you had to like literally do it by hand. Since I mean, that's like the crazy thing that we don't even consider. Most trading has been done without the advent of the computer age. Can you imagine like calling up your broker and asking him to get you into a trade, and then you put down the phone and you don't know if you got in or not, you don't know if you're filled, you don't know if anything happened, and you don't even know the prices at that time, at that moment in time anyways, because you're not going to know until you either call them back up or you look at the newspaper the next day. It's pretty awful. Anyway, so he
yeah, in our instant gratification, crypto never sleeps world, it's almost impossible to think of that. Almost impossible.
Yeah, absolutely, man, absolutely. So we're quite blessed here. Anyways, spent the next 5 or so years with him, just learning from him, working with him, being I mean, he was my mentor for a while, of course, so it was mostly me doing work for him, and then just by being around him, it was kind of like that was the value in it. And man, it was an experience I'll never forget. I mean, I'm so indebted to that man, just because it's just one of those things, man. It's he basically gave me a very unique experience. And then
have you given him a Bitcoin?
Actually, yeah, I did. I gave him a little bit, actually. It was pretty nice. That
debt has been paid then, I think, because it's going to be worth $100 million, which is the point of this stream, right, Eric Krown?
Yeah, used to it. Yeah, used to. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, man. It's and so that was a very invaluable experience. And then when we got to the end of it, I basically asked him like, hey, how do I pay you back? I feel like I should pay you back. How do I pay you back? And he said, you know what, just don't, just pass it on to the next person that needs it. And I didn't understand that at that time, man. I was pretty young, really. And to put in perspective, like at that time, I was just feeling adept in my own trading abilities, and I just started trading my own account essentially. And, I was having some success, of course. And just like anyone having success, well, what happens after your first typically what happens after your first few big successes, you start to get a little bit of a bigger head. You start to think that you're infallible. You start to think that you're Superman. And then I got humbled, and I got humbled pretty damn hard, man. I literally have been broke, off of trading, like literally $0 in my bank account. And that was a very sombering experience, but also looking back on it, certainly the best experience of my life. I said the experience with my mentor was amazing. This was better though. This was something that would be burned into my soul for hopefully my whole life. I can't imagine ever forgetting this. Then again, knock on wood, right? It's in who knows when the next lesson is to learn as well. So always want to be a student. But through that experience and going back to rock bottom and essentially having to start over, it gave me the imprinting to really hold on to what was most important for myself, the most important lesson that I had to learn myself, and that was risk management, in not thinking that I knew better than the market, because I thought with technical analysis, I knew better than the market, right? No, that's not the case, of course. Technical analysis, as I learned, is not a 100% like mathematical equation where you do it, you do your studies, you get the questions right on the test, and then you get an A. No, you can do the best studies, you can have the best technical analysis, you can put in all the right answers, you can still make a loss. The idea there is that over time, your technical analysis edge will make you a winner. That's where that's where I was infallible, and that's where psychologically speaking, I had to kind of go back into my own brain and really think about some things, and why that was. Why would I get into a mindset like that when it's obviously not conducive to trading? Well, after dealing with that for a little bit of time, I felt confident once again to take up trading. I'd been kind of like coasting for a little bit of time, and then I essentially did something that I don't recommend people do. Don't recommend anyone does this, but I was feeling quite confident, and I'd proved to myself that I could do it. And what I did was I basically just maxed out all my credit cards, applied for as many credit cards as I could get, applied for any loan that I could get, and maxed all that out. And then asked my father for like a 5,000 for a donation himself at a time when he couldn't really donate money to me, and he actually did end up giving me about $5,000. And then over the next few years, I just built it up, man. It gave me that laser like focus and that intrinsic motivation, not even motivation, but discipline to never ever deviate from what I've learned, and that is when it hits your rest parameters, you do not back off. There are certain things that must be held in if you do want to make this a long-term endeavor. So that was very important for me. I do understand that that's probably a common story for a lot of traders. A lot of the best traders that I know have gone broke as well. I'm sure there's some people out there who have not, but for me, I would say that was my best experience ever, because then it put me into a place where I could get to autonomously. I mean, then I could prove to myself that I could build myself from basically nothing, and then on top of that, to go through all those different emotions, you really get a good perspective on on the game as a whole. So that was a massive experience, massive learning experience for myself. Benefited from it, humongously, and of course, you don't want to get like too confident. Who knows when the next lesson is coming, but from that's where I started to really veer off from traditional markets and get into cryptocurrencies. Like a couple of years later. And that kind of brings me to where I am a little bit more approximately right now. After I'd kind of become a little bit more, I suppose, what's the right word for this? Maybe autonomous with my finances. I did I think most of the things that most people think you should do when you I suppose when you can do whatever you want. And I found that was pretty fun for about 2 weeks. And then it was pretty depressing, man. It was pretty damn depressing. And then so that really kind of led on to the process of creating this community, because there wasn't really too much left to do in a day. It's like, what do I have to be accountable for? I mean, I can do a few trades, that's great. But it's kind of like, you've already been there, right? It's within your comfort zone. You're not really change anything. So at that point in time, man, I was also feeling, quite lonely and a little bit even depressed in some ways. And I just figured that the best way to kind of get over this and the best way to kind of change things up was to do something new and create a community and hope and do what my mentor asked me to do, is just pass it on, right? So
you were there. You were there at the top of the mountain per se. and you
I
were
mean,
there and you were all alone,
not
and
so.
you realized that, simply making money, which, money isn't the only thing, but if you don't have it, it's everything. And
Right.
I think a lot of people who are in cryptocurrency are here to secure their financial freedom. And so
Hmm.
hearing that financial freedom might just be the first step. For a lot of people, maybe
Yeah.
it's not the news they were hoping for. Maybe that's not what. Maybe they don't even believe it. But it's very interesting to hear a young person who had reached that point in their lives, reached a level of expertise and mastery, and realized that this alone was not enough to sustain you as a person. And then, of course,
Yeah.
enter Bitcoin.
There you go. Yeah, Bitcoin just takes over at that point. Yeah, man. Anyone who's kind of on that journey, you're not going to believe what I'm telling you. And you should go and do all of those things that you think that you should do, and then you'll find probably the same answer, which is what a lot of my friends have found as well. Um, so yeah, man, going through all of that was the big thing. And of course, a rising tide lifts all ships. And I'm a really strong believer in this. I'm a really, 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 really strong believer in this, because just ask yourself a very practical question. This isn't like any sort of, new age type, airy fairy type stuff. No, just in a more practical sense. Hey, do you think the rich people in Brazil are having a good time? No, they have to take helicopters to places, because if they walk in the streets and if you're not familiar with Brazil, their economy is kind of in the gutter. If they walk around the streets, they're going to get robbed. It's not fun. You don't want that. And intrinsically speaking, the struggle that you go through for yourself, and that's it's a pretty dark place in some senses. So if you can shed any sort of light on that, then why not, man? It doesn't cost you anything. I don't feel like I'm going out of my way here with even doing the YouTube. It's actually quite compelling for myself to begin with. So man, it's almost like I need it as much as as much as anyone else needs it. I'd probably need it more. It's a selfish endeavor in that sense. It gives me that discipline to get through the day, and really just something to look forward to as well, which I feel is so important.
Yeah, I think it's important to have people rely on you as well, as a human, just being so self sufficient and being completely fine and not also needing anything from people and not having people
Hmm.
need anything from you is not a complete picture. You want there to be some accountability in your life. I've found personally, I had some years
Yeah,
of
absolutely,
complete lack of
absolutely.
accountability, and I found them not as fulfilling as when I had a lot on my plate. And so I think I think there's something very wise there, and very important. And I think that is why, in my opinion, you're able to separate yourself from other people in the space who are maybe doing this for speaking fees, or maybe doing this for whatever, or trying to create a platform for various reasons other than literally it fulfills you to provide this expertise. And I think that that's part of what makes you a unique figure in the space.
I'm really happy to hear that, man. But don't get me wrong. At the same point in time, it is selfish. Like I do sell things, and it's not all like charity, I suppose. But yeah, at the end of the day, man, it's almost a selfish endeavor just in that sense, because to give back in that way it gives you something that you can't really get anywhere else. You really can't get anywhere else. And going back on what you said, when you're autonomous and you don't really need anything from anyone else. I mean, we kind of all need things from each other just living in society, but in a more broader sense, of course. Then you give out. That's giving freely. That's like actual true giving. And there's just something that feels better about it, man. That's really what I can say. This is something that if I would have heard myself saying this like even 5 years ago, I'd be like, what the fuck did you do? Hey, what did you just say, man?
Who is this guy?
That sounds weird. Yeah, but now I've actually experienced it, so I would say that that's what I found to be true.
Yeah, and that's a great marker to know that 5 years ago you would have not approved of the person you are today. That's almost maybe a good thing, because
Isn't it weird how that works, man?
change
It's
is a
so
good
weird how it
thing.
works.
Uh,
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
so let's move a little bit to your journey now. You came onto FUD TV about a year ago. Let's just call it a year ago, and you had a small community, but things have really changed for you. And talk a little bit about what's been the journey since then. What is life like for you now? And how big is the community across your channels? What are the types of conversations and people you're meeting? Can you explain a little bit about your journey now that you've sort of gotten onto the circuit, so to speak?
Yeah, so the community from basically when we first met to where it is now has almost 10x. I think when we first met, it was about 3,000 subscribers on my YouTube, and now it's about a little over 30,000 subscribers, which is really it's something that I don't really understand, to be honest with you. I just don't understand the what's really happening to be quite serious. It's I don't really feel like anything crazy has changed. It's just more of it essentially. You know, for the most part, almost everyone that I meet is just really like just like blows me away in some cases. I've met some incredibly skilled and talented people, like people that uh it's like what like I didn't realize that you were watching cryptocurrency streams. These are people who in some cases, like, I can't say their names because they're quite literally famous in some senses. So to meet some of those people and then get connected in that way, that has been very changing, because now I'm connected with people who have major skills in other areas, which is incredibly helpful to myself, because I'm pretty one dimensional. One of my big drawbacks, one of my big failures, or whatever you want to call it, is the fact that I'm just focused on what I'm doing. So whenever someone's like an expert or has spent their life's energy learning something in, perhaps, like video editing or something like that, or they know a lot about photography or whatever it is, there's a million different other skills. And they can come and they can give me some information about that. That's so damn just nice to have that interplay between us. So meeting a lot of people like that has been incredibly nice. There's also it also attracts some of the bad actors as well. Don't get me wrong. I mean, there's certainly like some certainly like a lot more a lot more hate mail on the YouTube as well, which is fair enough, man. I understand that people are it's not gonna be for everyone. And of course on my channel, like my content's a lot more crass and whatnot, so people are definitely gonna be turned off about that. But at the end of the day, man, it's been mostly positive, especially just hearing people's stories, man. Like, there's been so many, when I tell stories about what I just spoke about earlier, there's been a lot of people who reach out to me after that and they say, hey man, I went through something similar and I found the same thing, and it just adds validity to it. So it's been definitely a net positive. There's definitely been some drawbacks as well. Also, my inboxes just get absolutely flooded, which I'm looking at right now. Is just, oh my god. That's probably the part that I dislike the most, is just looking at the messages piling up, and for whatever reason, I haven't learned how to turn it off just yet, but I figure that's the next step. But for
it's
the most
it's
part,
it's part of what makes you a great trader for sure. So just to from my perspective, you're now a regular guest on some of the biggest crypto programming. Certainly, you're looking at Cointelegraph interviewing you. They're one of the biggest, if not the biggest, cryptocurrency news outlet. You were on Ivan, you were on KDub or Crypto Zombie, all lovely guys, as we talked about. And what's next for you? What's next for your plans? Obviously, I know you didn't plan a lot of this, but now that you're here, where are your sights set? As what's the mission for your channel? What's the goal for your community? And yeah, how are you looking forward now that you've reached a place that like you were saying, you didn't imagine being here, but here you are.
yeah, so for me, it's getting to a level where I don't really understand it anymore. Like, it's like 30,000 is just, I don't understand that number, right? Um, so for me,
It's
I
about three
actually kind of
Bitcoin.
want to, yeah, actually, for me, it is about 3 Bitcoin, to be fair. Um, maybe
Just
about
thought
an
I'd
ounce.
translate it. I know you
The more that
regular
I think
numbers
about
are
it.
hard.
Yeah, man. So it's already way bigger than I ever thought it was ever going to be. For me, the most fulfilling part is creating the more like the more close relationships, and actually I've been thinking about it a lot recently. It's like, do I really want to focus my efforts on expanding the reach of this channel? Not really. No, I find it a lot more fulfilling to cultivate more close relationships. So I'm not necessarily going as hard on that anymore. And it's more about, for now, to just do what I enjoy the most about this, man, and that's just connecting with people, and then just getting the information out there, man. With regards to trading, trading's one of the loves of my life as well, man. It's incredibly liberating to be able to do this, day in and day out, and that's it's like playing a video game, man. I feel like a video gamer essentially. Um, in a sense. But anything, anything other than that, it becomes a lot more difficult to explain to people what I do now. Like
Hmm.
people say, "Hey, what do you do?" And it's like, I don't know how to explain this to you. I'm some sort of, and then they look up your channel and it's like, oh my god. And I've gotten a lot of messages from like people in my past who will look at my channel and whatnot, and they're just like, hey, what's going on here, man? What are you doing? Yeah, man. So it gets a little bit weird too with some people. Some people can get a little bit, little maybe. I probably shouldn't talk about that too much. But as far as that thing's going, as far as what I'm trying to do in the future here, it's not that I'm opposed to growing. It's just we've already got a damn strong community, man, and I really enjoy it the way that it is. If it grows more and we attract more of the same people, that's completely fine with me. But at the same point in time, I'd rather just focus on on prioritizing and cultivating more relationships with the people that have been here for a while, and going. That's kind of the most just relevant for me. And then yeah, if it grows over time, that's completely fine. But as far as like a business and whatnot, I mean, man, I kind of like it kind of like the way it is. I will be working on a couple of new projects, but they won't be ready anytime soon. And realistically, it's nothing major is changing with the channel, man. I'm just going to be upgrading some of the visuals and whatnot. Working with a phenomenal graphics guy who's been doing all my intros and everything. He's amazing. He's a creative genius, and just meeting this guy's so just interesting, man. This is what I talk about, like meeting these interesting people. So we have all sorts of cool things, lined up, and that's also just a major motivating factor as well. It's just the personal. I suppose like the ego induced part of it, where you're just like, hey, this is kind of cool. I take some pride in this.
So I mean, that's amazing to hear your journey and hear that you're pretty happy with capping it now. But I foresee, potential of you being, a cryptocurrency correspondent on something like CNBC or something like that, where, for the most part, all they have is really talking heads. You don't really have people who understand the direction of the market. And for better or worse, I've yet to find someone, and you guys can comment in the comment section below if you guys know someone better. But yeah, I've yet to find someone who consistently calls the direction of the market on a short to medium term, long term basis. So I think that you've certainly proven over your stream history that you have the ability to do the things that you say you're doing, and I think that that's been certainly welcome. And I appreciate you sharing everything about your past. And yeah, I would like to transition now to some good old fashioned Bitcoin cryptocurrency analysis, technical analysis. Let's get into the bread and butter here.
Alrighty.
What's going on right now with this cryptocurrency market? We have been in this chop suey for quite a while now.
Indeed. I suppose this is the time where I start to share my screen. 1 second over here. Let's see. Maybe. Okay. So I suppose full disclosure, I am long, as you did just see. I'm pretty damn long actually on my streamer account right here. I suppose I might as well just show this. I'm basically long from about 97.30 or sorry 97.50ish region on these December futures. That was when spot was trading around there. They obviously have a premium on them because they're futures in December. But more importantly, looking at price action right here, and again, and actually, I listened to your last video with Mike McGloin, who's amazing. Absolutely love those videos, and he said something that I think was genius, and I just want to tangibly talk about it for a second, just because he says, "Hey, I don't talk my book, and the reason why I don't want to talk my book is so that I don't have any skin in the game, right?" 100% understand that. Here is me, and understand I'm talking my book. I'm about to talk my book, but I'll tell you why I'm talking my book.
There are two ways. There are two ways to communicate the same thing, which is you're intending to show authenticity.
Right. Yeah. And like I said, man, that Mike, amazing, absolutely amazing. The things that he's doing, the things that he's showing are very unique. I'd love to get my hands on a lot of them, and incredibly valuable. Anyways, looking at the Bitcoin price action right here, and I suppose we'll kind of focus this on more long-term type stuff, as I'd imagine that's probably what people are more focused on. And this is actually a very good time to be doing a stream like this, because Bitcoin's done something that it has not done in over about a year and a half. With the way that we closed this last weekly, which was last night at 8 p.m. Eastern time, we closed above 11,500. In fact, 11,565 on Finex right here. But more importantly, this is a level that was a major point of contention during 2018. I'm sure that you remember this area right on over here. This was a double. This was the double top February in 2018. And if we actually zoom in on this region, it was particularly nasty, actually. And I'm talking about this region right on over here. You see that Bitcoin just ever so slightly makes a higher high, and then boom, massive trap to the downside. And realistically, just charting this off in a very, very basic way, we do see what's known as institutional order flow dynamics at play. And this is a very important concept to understand when it comes to trading, just because what we're looking at here is a major market mover, someone with big, deep pockets, essentially dictating the pace of the market and actually putting a lid on it right on over here. We got a massive rejection at 12,000, presenting the illusion of a bullish breakout to the upside. And like I said, I'm sure most people were here during this time. Bitcoin literally doubled in the span of about a week and a half, from 6,000 to 12,000. Everyone got super bullish after that. Remember, this was, not 20,000 was not so long ago. So everyone's getting super damn bullish. But have we actually changed anything over here? Did we get any higher highs? Did we take out any crazy levels? Well, no. This we're still making lower highs the whole way through. So this was a massive, massive trap. And because it is a massive trap, it becomes now a massive pivot on price action for the long term. So that means that anytime that we flirt around with this level, something major is potentially in store. And as you can see right here, I've already charted it out a little bit. I made a nice little blue box. Whoops, scroll it up right on over there. Whoops. Apparently, World War III is going on in the outside in Chicago right now, as always. Sirens going. I don't know if you guys can hear that, but looking at this price action right over here, we can see that this happened pretty much exactly where we are today. In fact, if we scroll on to the more recent times, you'll notice that that's exactly where we are today. And in fact, let me just get rid of this area right over here. We can talk about that maybe later if I can get out of there. Trading View, come on. Anyways, we actually closed inside this blue box for the first time in over a year and a half. This is significant because we're actually getting above that pivot. So when we look at that as institutional order flow dynamics at play, where we're actually selling off and trapping this region, now we've actually gotten above it, which is a change in behavior, more importantly.
So you would see, even though we wicked above that back in, I guess it's June or July at this point.
No closes here. No closes here.
So the wicks don't count. Yeah. We need to have a weekly close above that blue box. Right. And even though it looks like it's just by a hair, you're saying that's significant.
It's just by a hair. Yeah, it is significant. Yeah, and this is also a good good reminder of why wicks are a little bit less important when you're talking about long-term trending behavior, just because wicks are designed to get you on the wrong side of the price action. That's showing you where typically in like a highly leveraged market like this, where people are getting, liquidated essentially. So it's what we want to know is we want to know what the closing price is, because that's where the bots and algorithms are going to be essentially, programmed to bring things in by the close. So that's kind of like the standardized way of looking at things over time, and that's how we can kind of equalize this the whole way through. And that this is a major pivot on price action, just because in a more basic sense, hey, high right here, boom, we put in the same area right on over here, and then we actually take it out for the first time in a very long time as of last night. So this is this has been getting respect, is what I'm trying to say. Anyways, on the higher time frames here, we'll just cycle through it a little bit. We do see that actually we're kind of in a nice little flag formation. So we actually do see tentacles, or multiple tentacles, line up with each other. We see formations plus, well, I suppose just massive historical levels, and we do see a nice little flag consolidation. It's a very, very massive one. But hey, this is cryptocurrency land, man, and weird things do happen. So
that's one big
make
flag.
Moves based. Yeah, it's one big flag, man, is what it is. So we can actually make a measure move based upon this. This is not a perfect way of the way that I'm doing it, but this would actually be pointing us all the way up to about 16,500, which, by the way, you probably remember this area as well. This is a very special area to me, because this is actually where I started. This is where I got out of the market right here at 16,500, and it's coming in the exact same region, right? It's also a nice fib as well, kind of lined up with the 786 right there. But more importantly, I do want to scale the Moon Boy talk a little bit further back for a second. While I do think that this is actually while I am quite bullish on the higher time frames, make no mistake, when we're talking about trading markets, things don't go in a straight line. If you're looking at this as like a massive buy signal or anything like that, and this is also applies to all the things that I'm probably going to say during this video as well. Understand that, looking at the lower time frames, you're probably going to see a lot of ebbs and flows within this. It's not going to be a straight line. It's going to be a rocky road, most likely. Anyways, what I am trying to say though here is that the higher time frames are painting a pretty damn rosy picture. We had about a 35% move down off this high right and over here and held in the consolidation for the last like what 2.5 months. This is pretty damn orderly and pretty damn stock standard with what we see on Bitcoin historically speaking. I would have liked it would have made me a lot more confident if we actually came fully down to the 8,500-ish level at around the yellow 21 exponential moving average that you see right here on the weekly, as that's where Bitcoin really does historically like to play off these lows you can see right and over here. We didn't necessarily get that, and that's that's okay. But that would be the big contingency that I would say if this is going to end up being some sort of a massive trap to the upside. But I'm not leaning towards that. I think that that's certainly the less likely thing to happen here. But hey, it's all game of probabilities. My opinion is worthless. This is again coming from the same guy who when I first got on the videos, I was actually talking about lower prices than 3,100. But that's again my game, right? My game is following trends. So I'm never going to get the ultimate high or the ultimate low of something, just like I didn't get the ultimate high of 20,000. I got it right here at 16,500. Just like I didn't get the ultimate low right here, I got it right on over here, of which I'm actually still holding that position, but it did kind of mess up the entry on my streamer account right there. Anyways, so yeah, when we look at the higher time frames here, it really gives us a good perspective of just the greater picture, right? So again, I'm really discounting all the lower time frames and all the mess around muckery that we could see on there, but focusing on these higher time frames, we're also seeing a couple of things that we haven't seen in quite some time. But I do want to talk about this fundamental thing first. This is the Bitcoin difficulty ribbon. Shout out to Willy Woo for this one. Absolute genius, amazing. And this is more of a fundamental indicator. If you're not familiar with it, it's essentially speaking to the impact of the miner selling pressure on Bitcoin price action. When network difficulty reduces its rate of climb, miners are going out of business, leaving only strong miners who proportionally need to sell less of their coins to remain operational. That's a little bit of an incomplete statement, but for a working definition, here's how we accurately look at something like this. When this ribbon contracts, and it's just a bunch of moving averages, that's all it is. When this ribbon contracts, you can see that Bitcoin is putting in massive, massive, massive accumulation lows. And when it expands, it starts to trend. And when it starts to contract once again, that's when you put in your lows of 2014, 2015 right here, expands once again, and then boom, up for the next 3 years. And then what do we see on the current trajectory of Bitcoin? Where do we see where we are presently? Well, we see it once again contract during 2019. And as you can see right now, as of the last few ticks on this, as I kind of scroll in a little bit further, you can see them start to diverge away from each other once again. So that does tell me that as we approach a major, major resistance, all those things, all of equal importance. So that would suggest that this is likely to lead on, especially if we can break above our current highs, to the beginning of an actual trend, which if you've been paying attention for the last 6 months, Bitcoin's already been straight up. So this would literally be the beginning from that perspective. Anyways, going back into price action, I just want to line up all these different things because we're really creating a case right now. Of course, going over to the monthly right here, as I struggle for my words, we do see that Bitcoin is essentially, to me, this is a beautiful consolidation right here on the monthly. Again, monthly, it's going to take its time. This is not happening today or tomorrow or any day soon, really. We're talking about like a quarter of price action, right? And a quarter meaning 3 months. Anyways, looking at this, to me, this is a strong consolidation alongside the top Bollinger Bands, which once you're in a positioning like this, it typically sets you up to actually trend outside the top bands, which is what you see over here in the past prior bull markets. That's a very, 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 very strong move. And well, again, we haven't even really begun the trending activities right on over here. So I always like to kind of pull back and fade my own expectations because Bitcoin, we're dealing with big numbers here. We're dealing with quite literally 5 digits, which very few other trading assets can you actually even see that. And even though we do see some pretty massive price action right on over here, we haven't seen anything really major from a higher time frame, but it is setting up right now. Not only that, but we do see higher time frame also starting to turn around as well. This is your monthly Stokes right here. They are getting out of the bearish control zone for the first time in over a year. And I do want to remind myself that back in 2015, this is the exact same posturing around this level, around the 40-ish marker, where we actually really started to gain momentum to the upside. This is correlating with this area in January of 2016, leading up for the next 2 years straight to the upside. We also see monthly RSI finding its way back into the bullish control zone and really actually digging in there too. I do believe that is a stronger signature. And my own indicator, the monthly jewel, actually did give a little bit of a buy signal, not a super strong one a couple months ago as well. So higher timeframes are looking good. The next major thing that I want to see is I want to see a monthly close above 12,200. If we can do that, I'll be pretty damn, I'll be pretty damn confident looking for this trend to really to really progress higher. And when I say progress higher, I mean the prior highs would look quite likely. If we even just extend this to a quarterly chart, we'd see the same thing, but even more aggressive. Really, the last quarter that we closed, which I believe closed in June. Closed right at the top of this guy right here. And that's exactly the same sort of signature that you get when you're getting ready to push once again. Not only that, but looking at momentum oscillators, there's your quarterly Stokes, getting ready to cross a fresh cross the upside. We're not even talking about, just still up, but we're talking about a fresh cross.
It's an infant cross. It's a newborn cross.
It's a little baby one. Exactly. And who knows what's going to happen during his adult mature life. Looking at quarterly RSI back above the exponential as well, all these things from a higher time frames perspective look good to me. So that judges the longer term macro trend, right? So then we have to go down to the lower time frames and really, figure out what to expect, on the lower time frame perspective, because all of that is not really even relevant to what's going on today in a sense. And what we see right on over here, and to kind of boil this stream down, and I think a few sound bites that people will be able to take away from it. As long as Bitcoin is essentially below this blue box right here at about 12,300, 12,400, and above, especially this blue box right on over here between about 10.7 and 10.9, I do think that is appropriate to have a medium and long term bias on Bitcoin price action. Short term, you see muckery all the time. And in fact, I just forgot to talk about something very, very important, which we're going to get a little bit more deep into the Moonboy talk. But for now,
it's okay. Moonboy talk is all right. I think what we're setting up here is, what's amazing is a lot of people get into Bitcoin for the understanding from an ideological and a quote unquote fundamental perspective that as this asset continues to grow, there's only 21 million, which might sound a lot, but once you do the math on a global population, it's not very much. And so you start doing the math on assets like gold, on different types of currencies, and all of a sudden Bitcoin's 21 million really doesn't seem like that much at all. In fact, it seems like it's very little. And so when you start seeing examples like what you're showing, which is the time frames from a technical standpoint, start to match up with another major quote unquote parabolic move to the upside potentially, it's very exciting to see the technicals, the fundamentals, and the ideological sort of biases towards Bitcoin line up and say, hey, you know what? Exactly. This thing could have rocket fuel on it once again. And then what kind of a situation does that even put us in? And is this even the last cycle? Probably not. So it's pretty exciting to hear you talking about. And I know, because I've had you on my channel many times when you were bearish. You're not saying these things because you need Bitcoin to go up or because you're so indoctrinated. You're saying them because the fundamentals are lining up and showing them to you. And that's what I love. And that's what's so exciting and almost magical about this moment is this really is the beginning. It feels like the cycle has potentially run, but it's not. What you're showing me is that this is the beginning of the cycle.
Yeah, I'd say this blue box right here, if we do break above that, then this is going to have that avalanche of effects and be really the precipice of an actual breakout, like a macro breakout. What we've seen so far from like the January lows to this point right on over here is just like it's not your average retracement, but it is it's just if you get rid of the price scale on the right hand side, this doesn't look all that crazy, right? Anyways, going back into the lower time frames, because I do think that this is quite relevant, and this is again going across my biases. So remember, as a trader, it's always just a game of probabilities, all just a game of of risk and reward essentially. So there's no 100% setup. Even if you have the best technical analysis, there's going to be weird things that happen. Looking at this area right on over here, though, I do believe that as long as Bitcoin's above about 10.7-ish region, I would have a bullish bias on medium higher time frames. Lower time frames, like I said, they float around. But on this whole, and now talking specifically to the macro, and I'm talking about like months and months of price action, if Bitcoin can get back above this blue box territory right on over here, about 12.3, 12.4, I would look at this whole consolidation as being resolved to the upside, and we're going to likely see all of those higher timeframes that we just spoke about earlier start to really progress and mature in that same direction for like an actual macro breakout. By the same token, there's always two sides to the cone, as they say, and I'd say anywhere below about 9,500, that's where I start to turn bearish once again, perhaps. Talking about big, massive moves down to about 85, or well, 8,500 is not too far away, but probably 7,500, 6,000. We could be talking about a legitimate reversal if Bitcoin actually gets back down around here. Obviously, warning signals would be fired if we broke 10.7 and of course 10.2. So it's not like we're just gonna go straight down there, just like we don't go straight to the upside, of course. But below this area, I would say that this would be a massive change of behavior, and I certainly would not be bullish. In fact, I wouldn't even be medium or long-term bullish if we actually broke below this guy right here. So let me actually explain this one now. So we're going to talk about some moon boy type stuff. So please bear with me, but it's for good reason. Anyways,
So just to be clear, there is a situation on this chart where you're not medium or long term bullish. In fact, you're overall bearish.
Absolutely. And that's
meaning new lows potentially below 3,000.
Where I become bearish for new lows would actually be a little bit further south of that, and that would come in line with looking at how do I want to do this? Yeah, we'll do it on this chart right here. That would come in line with looking at this trend line. So you see this dotted trend line with these red arrows pointed towards it. This is like the genesis trend line of Bitcoin, and it has been a massive just indicator of where we are in this market phase. When we're below it, it's generally a good time for investors to accumulate and for traders to sell whenever we test the trend line. You see right here, beautiful trade, right here, beautiful trade. But for the investors, when we break above, boom, parabolic move 1, parabolic move 2, blow your top off, and then come all the way back down. And where do we base upon for this next literal 2 years of price action here? On the same trend line, right? The same trend line holds it up the whole way through. And once again, we go parabolic during 2017, 2018. And when Bitcoin blows off its top and comes back down, what do we do again? We actually break through that dotted trend line, which was actually confluent with the 200 exponential moving average on the weekly, which of course is very, very important for long-term direction. And what do we get over here? We get the same signature that we got right on over here, where Bitcoin spend some time below it. And it's a great time to accumulate. Everything below here, absolute beautiful time to accumulate, of course. And what happens when we break back above? I mean, Bitcoin literally doubled almost in the span of a couple of weeks is what we're looking at. So more importantly, from a long-term perspective, I could maybe talk about Bitcoin getting back to maybe getting new lows, but probably getting back to its prior lows if we broke below this trend line. But here's the thing. As you can see, usually when we're living above this trend line, especially after a fresh break, we like to live above it for years at a time. And
yeah, it looks like almost 5-6 years. It looks like the last break below it was 2013 or something like that.
Yeah, it's been a while. Yeah, before 2013, then we based off it in 2015, 2016.
Yeah, we never even broke it in the last bear market.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, it actually became the base. So it was a pretty damn big change of behavior when we actually broke it to the downside this past year. But breaking back to the upside, remember, I had this chart in here well before any of this break, even below 6,000, happened in 2019. So to watch this one emerge, and especially for the people who have been on my channel, watching this one, over the past year, to watch it get broken. And when it got broken, I actually thought that we were gonna like live below here for forever. No, that wasn't the case. What we see over here now is more akin to what we saw right on over here. It's not like a trend line that just gets respected indefinitely. So my point is that to see it get back above, that really confirmed that belief as looking at it as a period of accumulation rather than a period of despair. And you can see that actually Bitcoin's based off it plenty of times. And again, I want to remind myself to talk about this. This trend line had been in here for, about a year prior before we even ever had any of this action. So to see it get played off of adds validity to it is kind of the case that I want to construct. So yeah, as long as we're above this trend line right here, I'm not really I don't think it's appropriate to talk about like going back to prior lows or even creating new lows or anything like that. And that's currently coming in around 8,700. You also see the 50 exponential moving average on the 3-day kind of coming around this region as well. But yeah, as long and keep in mind that this is rising over time. So yeah. Anyways, back onto the fun stuff, I suppose.
Yeah, we got that out of the way. Now we can go on to the. We did the. the required Doom Boy talk. Now let's move on to the fun stuff here.
There you go.
When do I get a new
Yeah,
Lambo, Crown? When do I get a new Lambo?
All right, let's talk about some fun stuff then. Okay, so we have 3 moving averages on here. We have the green 50 exponential, we have the purple 200 exponential, and we have the white 200 simple. The most important ones are the green and the purple, and we're going to refer to them as the golden cross and death cross. When they get the golden cross, it's a 50 above the 200, and it's generally bullish. Well, it's always bullish, not always bullish. But when you get the and then when you get the green below the purple, that's the death cross, and you usually get some nasty price action like this. Anyways, I won't do it on this video here. If you want like the full on in-depth, with examples, definitely go check out my channel on the long-term analysis playlist. I don't want to bore everyone with the details right here, but I've gone through all of the crosses, all of the death crosses and golden crosses in Bitcoin's history when we're in a general uptrend, which this is, I still identify this as a general uptrend. It looks pretty damn good to me. And I've gone through all the different ones in Bitcoin's history, and I found that on average in the past, and again, this is before this price action even happened over here, but in the past, when we get a death cross in a general uptrend, it typically takes about 2 weeks to go from death cross to golden cross. During that 2 weeks, anywhere from about 10 to 20% of damage is done to the downside, and there's usually something else. And then the fun part, after it gets golden crossed, it usually takes, on average, about 2 to 4 months to get this is where it gets crazy, to get a 2x in price action, though, 100% gain. In this case, from the cross itself. So in this case, it would literally imply above 20,000. It would imply new highs.
So the death cross. So the death cross in a bull market, if you're a very conservative investor, the death cross in a bull market is statistically one of the best times you could be buying, right?
Yeah, actually, yes. So here's the thing, and remember, I had done all those calculations before this ever happened here. So what do we see here? Death cross on the 22nd of July, golden cross on 4th of August. It's about 2 weeks. How much damage do we see done to the downside? Almost 13%. So right in the middle there as well. And now we've actually seen Bitcoin get the great divergence after the after the golden cross right here. We get the divergence between the 50 and the 200, which tells us that the cross is being respected. It's being, it's working, it's operational. And now we've gotten both of these moving averages above the white 200 simple. So of course, I didn't just put the white 200 simple there for no reason. The reason why it's in there is because I've also noticed that each and every time we get the golden cross, and then we get both those golden cross moving averages above the white 200 simple, we actually do come down and test somewhere around either one of the 200s. It doesn't matter if it's the exponential or the simple, but usually within about 1% of those guys. And we actually haven't done that yet. In fact, we are pretty far away. Relatively speaking, we're about 2.5% away from this wick down to the
2.5%.
Yeah, right. So I would say, yeah. So I would say there's a couple of contingencies with what I'm saying right now. Is it perfectly aligning with what we've seen historically? It's mostly in line, yes. Would we want to see historically a move a little bit lower, a little bit closer to these guys? Yes. Is it a big deal? Probably not. But more importantly, I would say that this is appropriate in general. I'd say that I can run with that as an assumption as a trader, as long as we remain above, especially the white 200 simple. As what I've found in the past as well is that we don't actually get an open and close on the 4 hour below the white 200 simple until the trend is actually finished with its upwards momentum. So I would say that's as a trader, I can kind of roll with that as long as we're above this region. And that's why I was saying this blue box right here at about 10.7, very important. If we lose that one, I'm no longer medium or long-term bullish. I'm probably just more neutral than anything and probably just want to watch, as it would indicate that something new is going on. And of course, this will rise over time, right? Because it's not just the blue box here. I mean, it's going to be here for now, but as Bitcoin progresses, these two moving averages will likely move up with it. So I keep an eye on them, and that's kind of how I'd be judging it. But that's kind of the more fun stuff of of a video like this, I suppose.
So what would be in your mind a big buy signal? Is it the green crossing the purple? Is it an even stronger signal?
It's this guy right here.
It's that. So we've done it, especially. So what was the price that day? It looks like it was about 10.5, 10.6.
10, yeah, about 10. Cross happened at 10.5. 10.7 is where price action was.
So we're a couple percent off from there, and obviously it seems like now is about as good of it's close enough. It's spitting distance from a percent standpoint to that number. Is there another buy signal you'd be looking for that if another indicator flashes, would you, for someone who might be sitting on the sidelines right now, who's maybe not so confident but understands this is a Bitcoin bull market, is trying to size up another entry? I think a lot of people, there's a lot of people who have been sitting on coins for a very long time. Bless all of you. I'm certainly have some coins that have been very kind to me, some coins that have been not as kind to me. And I know that there's a lot of people looking to get fresh entries into the market. What would you say to those people?
Yeah, so of course, not financial advice, not a financial advisor, blah, 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 blah.
This is not
you already know.
financial.
Of course. Anyways, so what am I looking at here? If you want the next sort of big signal as far as what I look at, let me just put these guys back on for a second here. There we go. Get those beauties back on there. Yeah, the next major area that would actually be a more classical way of doing this, like the old timers will love this. Any sort of a higher time frame close above this prior high that we put in late June, that would be a damn big signal as well. And that's probably the next thing that I'd really be waiting for.
Around 13.
But everything. Right. This is about, right at 13,000 essentially. If we could get a daily close above there or just any higher time frame, that would look pretty damn good. So yeah, I kind of want to just summarize what I'm talking about here, just to make it 100% clear. What I'm saying, I'm not saying that Bitcoin is literally going to go straight from here to whatever crazy price target that we can come up with. But what I am saying is that there's going to be a lot of ebbs and flows, and as long as we maintain above those critical areas that I spoke about, then yeah, I would likely hold true to those targets. And talking about timeframes on them. Like we saw, like I said, on average, typically between 2 and 4 months is what we see for that to actually unfold.
So in theory, within 4 months, the statistical likelihood is that because of this fresh golden cross in a bull market, we're looking at 100% growth from about 10,000. Just call it 10,000 for easy math, and so that would put us. And even though it was slightly above 10,000. That would put us right at our all-time high of 20,000, which we didn't close a high time frame on. We just wicked up to it. Would that mean because we never closed a monthly, we never closed a weekly above 20,000 or around 20,000? It looks like there's, what are those highs of the all-time high in your mind? What would a weekly or a monthly close above a certain threshold be in your opinion of tremendous significance? And then of course, extrapolating from there, what do you think that could mean for the market as a whole?
If Bitcoin gets above its past prior high,
yep.
You're probably going to see retail FOMO once again. I don't think that we've been seeing really retail FOMO recently. Looking at Google Trends and whatnot, people are still mostly kind of snoozing on Bitcoin right now. It's nowhere near what it was in 2017. I'll tell you that. So, once Bitcoin gets back around here, I mean, you have to think of it from the perspective of like mainstream media and retailers who, when Bitcoin first got up to 20,000, everyone was talking about this is a bubble, this is tulips, whatever it is. And that was kind of like the stock standard response to something like this. It's a bubble. And, and for good reason. It was a bubble. It was quite literally a bubble. 100%. 100%. But for the average retailer to hear that and to see something go up that crazy and then come down and be justified in that, and then they kind of just write it off and say, hey, haha, I was right that, that Bitcoin's a bunch of rat poison. Well, if Bitcoin can get back above to that level or even above it, God forbid, there's going to be a lot of very interesting conversations on like CNBC and in major news channels, and just the average person saying, so Bitcoin back at $20,000 is just it's gonna provide that response where people are gonna say, oh man, I really did miss out. This thing actually isn't tulips.
You can't lose.
For the yeah, there's no losing. No, kidding.
Well, that's what that would be the narrative, right? Because in theory, if you just held on to it,
right.
Once you're at an a new all-time high, the theory is if you had never sold, you never lost, and it's only the weak hand that lost. It's if you had just held on, nobody would have ever lost money. Let's go ahead and sell the house.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's what the OGs know, right? We've seen this cycle many times. So yeah, that's kind of what I think. Just from a more, from a more like market dynamics understanding standpoint, we'd kind of be looking at. So that'd be like the next final frontier, I suppose, from like the major levels. But just looking at this right on over here, and kind of, even just wrapping this up. With regards to what we were looking at on the higher timeframes earlier and putting on the volume profile right here, we just see even more things agreeing with this area. I mean, this is quite significant to get back above this region. Not only is it a major fib, but it's also the kind of last of the Mohicans for these higher value nodes, which are not even high value nodes at this point. I mean, this is a high value node right here. This is a high value node right here, and I'm sure everyone remembers the like getting stuck in the mud at 6,000 and 3,000 region. It was super boring, and not all that much opportunity on a day-to-day basis. When we approach regions like this, and we actually clear a region like this, which it's a little bit off center if we actually did clear it or not last night, but it does look to me like we did. Then there's extremely low market acceptance above. I mean, this is pretty much nothing. You're going to see Bitcoin likely go through those ripping behaviors once again, and that means, of course, if Bitcoin gets back above the last prior high, there's no more past prior history really be going off of. So at that point in time, you can get some really crazy moves in price action. I mean, you're basically in price discovery once again, and that's when the most right.
So is there a way?
That's when the most.
Is there a way to measure based on prior cycles? Let's go ahead and just ride your statistical formula out here. Within 2 to 4 months, we make 100% gain off the golden cross. That puts us at a new all-time high. Let's just call it by a hair a new all-time high. What does that then mean for the timing of this trend? Let's call it 4 months to put it on the long side. So if 4 months we make a new all-time high, what would that mean for how fast we retrace to our all-time high given the past bull run or bull cycle, which as I understand it, it took longer last time, even though it's supposed to take longer this time. What would it mean from just a technicals, looking at the charts, trying to make measured moves, or I don't know if there is a measured move to be made off these kinds of things, but what would it mean if we retrace within 4 months to a new all-time high over $20,000? Looking at Bitcoin's history and its last cycles, is there any way to extrapolate? Or I know this, we're not going to hold you to this or anything, but what do you think? What is the chart saying? What is it speaking out? If this is the case, that within 4 months we'll be back at our all-time high.
Yeah. So I mean, if Bitcoin makes a new high, at that point in time, man, I guess I have to repeat something that my mentor used to tell me when I used to ask him the same question. He said, trends are likely to continue until they don't. And what that means is that when something's making new highs, a big beginner mistake is like trying to short a massive breakout or trying to buy a massive dump, right? Which we saw, a little bit more proximal, a lot of people trying to buy the whole way down. Well, then we're going to have the same thing to the upside. And the thing is that when you're in a blue sky, that's called a blue sky breakout. When you're in a blue sky breakout, there's really nothing to be done as far as what I care about, as far as what I look at. There's really nothing to be done until you see some sort of a reversal formation, divergences on higher time frames, something crazy like that. And even then, you want to see follow through, you want to see heavy volume, you want to see extremes on those sorts of highs, because quite literally, when you look at a monthly like this, and again, you just get rid of all the things on the right hand side. If Bitcoin gets back above to where it was, in December 2017. That's actually the beginning of actually making a new higher high, a new all-time high. I'd say that it's likely to continue after that. It's you'd probably have a pushback on a lower time frame. Once we first get there, because people are just gonna be selling the prior high, but more medium to longer term, I'd expect that to actually accelerate through there. There's no real ways of doing things after that. Elliott waivers will tell you otherwise. People wave your money goodbye, baby. Anyways,
I'm Elliott.
Everyone. Anyways, I mean, and again, not to talk too much dirt on Elliott waivers. I'll leave that for another time. But more importantly, there's some mathematical formulas with volatility that you can kind of come up with as well for ranges, but that's not going to tell you a price target. It's going to give you a range and a likelihood of it. So realistically, I don't even really know of too many things at that point in time. I'd imagine that over the course of the next 2 to 4 months, if we were to get up to that region And again, we're making massive assumptions right now, to be quite fair. But if we were to get it back up to that region, we'd probably have some formations in play. And then from the formations, you can probably make some measure moves and do that kind of stuff. That's going to happen, more proximal to the time that we actually get back back around there. Again, making that major assumption that we do. But hey, from the things that I look at, like I said, I am long. I'll put it that way.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, I'm not, your statistics show 100% gain is the likelihood off a golden cross in a bull market throughout Bitcoin's history. You've back tested it. We just got a golden cross. Obviously, we're no guarantees here, but assuming we do make that, we'd be in a blue sky breakout. And given the length of the cycles before, it seems very likely that the breakout would continue for several months longer, at the very least, probably 12 months longer.
I'll speak directly to that point right now, because you're actually onto something that I'd like to expand on. So let's actually just go back to the last general upwards market that we had, and you can just see it for yourself. Again, I don't want to be the person telling you what to do or any sort of signals things. I'll show you what I'm thinking and why I'm thinking, and then you can just judge for yourself. Anyways, as I scroll on back here, oh man, come on, TradingView, you can do it. You just have to go, okay, there we go. So this is the last prior just straight upwards market that we had. And again, same moving averages here. Green, purple are death cross moving crosses. And then the white 200 simple is, well, just our 200 simple. Anyways, we'll just pick a random one right here. You see this one takes about a week and a half and such. We get the golden cross right here. This one actually the outlier to the downside. This one's in only a 50% gain, about 55% gain. Still pretty damn impressive. That would put us around that $15,000, $16,000 target. But here's the thing, in speaking to your point now, if we do get that move, again, making the assumption that Bitcoin actually does get that move, what are the downstream effects? Because there's going to be massive downstream effects. Well, as you see right on over here, we get the golden cross. We play at a 50% move, come back down, do a death cross for a little bit of time. And what happens after that? Another straight up move. The trends are likely to continue. So yes, we death cross and then we golden cross once again. This one, how much? This one 170%. So this one's a little bit more of an outlier to the upside. There's also a 400% one in there as well. But then what happens after this one? This is the end of the run, right? Then we get a death cross once again. Golden cross about a couple weeks later. What happens after this one? You see where I'm getting at, right? So these things typically, beget more trendy behaviors after a little bit of period of consolidation, which you can likely expect around around major pivots like that, like a prior high. There's going to be a lot of people selling, or you'll probably get some sort of volatile behavior like that. And we get the same thing right on over here, right? Another death cross, golden cross, about 2 weeks apart. We get them both above the white 200 simple. And then this one a little bit more dubious, right? Because this one literally goes all the way to 20,000. So this one's a 400% gain almost. Not necessarily expecting that, because that's like literally the last drive of a massive, one of the most massive parabolic rallies in the history of mankind. So yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to show right there, is that just because we have that move
in the history of mankind yet.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. Love it, man. Absolutely love it. So
I don't want to make you talk all about outside of your comfort zone, which is of course the technicals, but I do want to understand here, now that we have what's clearly institutional drivers that are pushing this market around. I think the amount of volume, the speed of this recovery, the amount of institutions that have said we're trading Bitcoin. It's pretty clear that there's a lot more big boys at the table this time around. And yes, you're talking about a retail FOMO wave, which will potentially, add quite a bit of liquidity, but probably not even as much liquidity as one of those big market makers at the table. The question is, do things with this, more mature market, would they potentially move faster, more dynamically, more explosively, or with a FOMO wave of the retail, or would the big boys start more likely slowing things down and kind of taking advantage of that, or I guess for me it sort of comes together with making a new all-time high and then having another FOMO wave and having such a much more mature market. To me, spells out, everything that the Bitcoin maximalists, that the Bitcoin idealists have talked about from the beginning, which is it becoming so big, that it's got to become accepted, or you're kind of foolish not to start exposing yourself to this asset because, it's just the numbers are the numbers, and it's been performing in such a way that you're kind of a fool not to. It becomes that, who's the last one because it's a winning game. And so it just becomes very exciting when you're telling me, and I know you're very pragmatic, that we're looking at potentially, new all-time highs, and then what that would mean from a social and economic, an emotional landscape. It's all just extremely, extremely exciting. Of course, nothing is for sure. We could go down, but it's looking very promising at this moment. What is your feelings towards Bitcoin? Have you become more moon boyish over time looking at this rally? Your opinion obviously not being the thing you trade.
Right, yeah, right. My opinion, to deliberately separate my opinion from technical analysis, yeah, man. I mean, it's much better to be a moon boy in a bull market than a smart bear in a bull market. I mean, smart bears have been telling you that we're going to go down to 8,500 for a couple months now. It's not what it's looking at, right? Looking like, or it's just trading towards that fact. It's just not been profitable as just being a blind bull essentially. And to kind of touch on what you spoke about earlier, would you expect things to move slower or faster? I'd say actually relative to our past market cycles, probably slower in terms of volatility. The reason why is because with more people inside this market, that means that the books are going to become more and more and more thick. And if the books are more thick, then it's going to take more money to drive through them. And if it takes more money to drive through them, then it's naturally going to take longer. And I can tell you this straight up, man, you're 100% on target with that. One of the good things about me being back here in Chicago is that I get to connect with a lot of people from from my former life, and these are people who are now kind of higher ups at some pretty prominent firms. I probably shouldn't name their I won't name their names just
You do not have to name drop. It's not a requirement.
Right. I don't think it'd be a huge deal, but the biggest of the big quant firms and market making firms, I can tell you they are certainly in Bitcoin. And one of the biggest problems that they have right now is not that they it's not that they can't figure out Bitcoin. They can figure out Bitcoin pretty damn well. What they have the biggest issue with is actually getting the liquidity that they need, and that's a major factor in actually holding them back from going full on in. They
explain that a little bit more, please. How are they not able to get the liquidity?
Right. So the thing is with the market right now, it's pretty small. We're literally talking about a market cap that's not even $500 billion for the whole cryptocurrencies, let alone Bitcoin. When these people want to trade, and we're talking about big firms, we're talking about people who manage billions of dollars, and have books of billions of dollars. I mean, probably even more, probably in some cases even more than that, I'd imagine. And most importantly with that, when they do a strategy, they really want to put their size in the market. It needs to be enough for them to make it worthwhile. Because they can make money in this market, but at the level that you have to commit yourself right now, it doesn't really make sense to kind of make that trade-off on time when you could get that liquidity in another market like Forex, which is just super easy. In cryptocurrency land, it is a very immature market in the way that it stands right now. This is incredibly early in the whole game. Again, I'm not trying to induce any FOMO right here, but it quite literally is early in this game if this is the thing that we think it might be. So with those big firms, they are actually really looking. They're really looking. They all have cryptocurrency desks. They're all looking into it, at least from the ones that I know. And they want to get more into it, but they can't right now anymore. Because it just wouldn't make financial sense. There's just not enough. Not enough meat on the bones with regards to just literally the liquidity available in the books for them to really make it worthwhile for their time and effort.
So, I mean, to me, that's yet another bull case, because as the market matures, their ability to stick more than their pinky toe into the water and start, really getting in there and doing the thing that they love to do, which is take their big wallets and make big movements into the market. It seems as though there's just more and more and more bull factors. And again, nothing is a guarantee, but statistically, the probabilities seem to be pushing towards an extremely, extremely bullish case for the next few months, years, maybe even a few decades for Bitcoin. And that's why, it's just exciting to be in an asset like this. And I know you chuckle there, but it is exciting because it is kind of a new thing, a deflationary currency that has less and less coming into the market and more support growing over time. It seems as though all of the stories are proving out, and it's just an exciting time to be playing ball.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I'm only chuckling just because I'm saying things that I would, I'm saying things here that I believe, but it's just when I first came into the space, I'm like, man, I do not want to turn into one of them damn moon boys. And then look at me,
We
look at me
converted him.
right
We
now.
converted him.
You're
We got him.
talking about this,
He's on our
but
team now.
yeah, certainly, maybe I'll be wrong on that. Maybe I get another life lesson with it as alongside of it. But this is what I'm seeing right now, man. And like I said, talking my book. For full disclosure, I am pretty long, and this is my streamer account. This is not my main account, so that is a little bit on the higher side for that account right there. And essentially, I want to be very, very transparent with something like that, just because there's going to be people out there who say, well, you're talking long because you're long. Well, it's actually the other chicken came before the egg.
Yep.
I'm long because that's actually what I'm looking at right now, man. I actually do believe it, and that's sometimes of some sombering effects where I chuckle even to what we're saying right now.
Well, I appreciate all of your knowledge, your expertise. This has certainly been an extremely educational stream. If you want to bring yourself back up here.
Hello.
Yeah. What's up, dude? Yeah, I mean, just amazing stuff to see. I'm obviously have been very much so on the fundamental, the ideological, trying to help translate the message that is Bitcoin and cryptocurrency to audiences that might not know, or help give more light on certain different projects in the space. But to hear your voice, which has been consistently pragmatic, turn to this level of just mathematically driven bullishness is very, very exciting. And I just want to thank you again for coming on FUD TV and sharing your mastery and your expertise with the audience. Do you want to say any final words to the FUD Nation?
I just want to say thank you, man. Thanks for having me back on. It's been an absolute pleasure. Again, for all the people that I met through this community, hey, good to know you, my friends, and of course you as well, my friend Elliot. Man, it's like I said, been such a pleasure. And anything other than that, man, I'm just at a loss for words, really.
Thanks so much, Eric. It's been a pleasure as usual. We hope to see you soon. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. Certainly a special and very personal episode from Mr. Eric Krown himself. I hope you guys enjoyed the TA as well. Some really amazing things. Obviously, I was trying to juice some very bullish, very moon boyish comments out of him because he's very reserved with that stuff. And I know if I can get him excited, that means that we have exciting times ahead indeed. Obviously, nothing's 100% and none of this is financial advice. This is just us really being excited about some very bullish structural elements within Bitcoin. If you enjoyed this episode, throw a like, leave a comment in the comment section below. As usual, I'm Elio Trades. You're watching FUD TV, and I'll see you very, very soon on the next episode.